So I've said in prior videos that playing defense, feeling the need to protect your identity or a certain viewpoint is rarely, if ever, a good thing. In theory, what you want to do is whenever you're faced with a decision or you're debating on a topic and having a conversation, challenging a view, you want to do it as objectively as possible, right? If your goal is what the stated goal should be, it's to get to some form of objective truth, get to the best possible decision you can get to, and in theory, the way you would want to do that is you would want to take in all the information. You would want to make sure you had as much information as possible and that you were interpreting it as accurately as possible. It's not about what answer it leads to. That shouldn't matter. Your objective is to get to the truth on the matter. So I mention that because I think when the defensiveness kicks in, when the anger, when the passion kicks in, it's a sign that things are starting to sway from that, right? It's an instrument that you can use to check of, wait, why am I getting angry right now? If my goal is to just get to the truth, there shouldn't be emotion driven in this. I should very calmly, kind of objectively just be assessing and asking questions and trying to understand. There's no benefit to anger coming in. All that's going to do is perhaps shut down and not allow me to hear something that might be valuable, a valuable input, because I'm afraid that it doesn't line up with what I thought it should be. So, something to look out for sure, in conversations, in your thought processes. When you start to see emotion creep in, you start to get defensive, something to look out for. And what I always think about is, certainly for myself, using that, but also what do I do with that knowledge or that understanding when I'm in a conversation with somebody, right? So if I start to see somebody else do it, I start to see the anger ramp up, I start to see the emotion, I start to see that sense that they're getting defensive on a topic and they're digging in on it. It's one thing for me to know that, hey, they might be being irrational here, they're not really listening, but where do I go? And you can always shut down a conversation. Certainly, that's always an option. I've talked about this in other videos. Pick your truths, not your battles. Truths, not your battles. There's not a lot of point in just engaging head on into somebody that's not ready to really listen or think openly. But perhaps you're in a situation where you need to, and you have to go through it. And you're trying to convince them, and maybe you need to convince them in that moment. You need to think about, how do I approach this? I see somebody that's acting irrationally. I think a lot of times our temptation is to meet force with force. So if we see somebody starting to do that, we ratchet up as well. We say, let me give them more information. Let me overwhelm their defenses, so that I can get this point through. Because the belief is that, I think oftentimes we believe they know what they're doing, right? There's intent there. They're being defensive because they're not actually looking for objective truth. They're looking to, get more clicks or add more followers or just play to their base or whatever the thing is. That's what they're really after. And you start to dismiss the things that they're saying. You almost start to do it in reverse. You now recognize you're dealing with a bad actor. So you start to think like, okay, I'm going to treat them differently, right? Now we're in a battle. So I need to be defensive. I need to be on the lookout. All those things start to come in. But I've started to think of late that you have to be careful with that. I mean, certainly that's true sometimes. There are some bad actors out there. There are some people who are playing a different game than trying to get to objective truth. But you have to be careful to assume that right away, right? And that's what I was doing for a while. When I saw that emotion kick in, I said, okay, I'm dealing with somebody, who's probably in that vein. And it's particularly true when you're dealing with like influencers, right? People that, media, talk show hosts, social media personality influencers who have strong views on things. It's very easy to say, their views are so strong, they're fighting about it so strongly because they're not being genuine, right? But what I started to think is you have to entertain the possibility that they really believe what they're saying, that they genuinely believe so deeply and fundamentally that they're right. That's what's leading to the defensiveness, right? It's not fear that they're going to lose the game. It's certainty that they're right, right? They've almost come to a foregone conclusion that I already know what the objective truth is. So my only game now becomes to make sure everybody else gets to it. And intuitively, instinctually, the feeling is you know, you have to, that's an active thing. I need to actively bring people to this. I need to, and if they don't see it, I need to make them see it because I'm so sure that it's right. So you have to consider that that's what somebody's doing, right? That they are just that sure. And I think it changes the way you approach it, and it changes the way you might handle that interaction, because rather than being more dismissive, rather than thinking I'm going to overwhelm the defenses, if you kind of entertain that possibility, like, hey, why are they so sure? Let me approach it from a genuine way, right? As we always say, let's approach it as an opportunity to better learn and understand, and be okay with the fact that maybe they're so sure because they're right. And like, let's hear it. Like, give me the best you have, because I'm totally open to it. And if you're so sure, make me as sure. Engage it, welcome it. Don't get defensive. Don't dismiss it. Don't battle back. Say, great, this is great, right? And I did a video yesterday about Occam's razor and this idea of the simplest is the best, not because it's the best, but because it's the easiest to test. Think of it in that vein. Like, oh, you have something that you're super sure of? Well, that's perfect, because we could test that, right? Because it's easy to prove something's wrong. It's hard to prove something's right. So if we can't eliminate it, if I can't disprove it, then we got something here. So let's do it. Let's look at it. Let's look at it honestly and genuinely and see what we got. I think that's the approach you have to take, because it touches on a number of different things, right? You see often that people get frustrated because they don't feel like they're being heard. They don't feel like people understand what they're trying to say, and they feel like they need to yell louder, and that's exactly what we're getting at. This method helps to disarm that. It's not overwhelming the defenses, it's disarming the defenses. Hey, I'm right here with you. I want you to be right. If you have the answer, that's awesome. That's the answer I wanted. That's good. That's the objective. Not to just battle you. There's no use in that. So you disarm those defenses. You up the likelihood that you're going to get to some objective truth, right? You open yourself to the possibility that might happen. And lastly, there's no risk, right? If the sense is I'm dealing with a bad actor, I need to, protect myself. If you're wrong, right? If they are truly a bad actor, they're not somebody who genuinely believes it. They're not somebody who actually thinks that's what's happening. You'll still get there. You're still going in with the mindset of, I'm testing this and I want to explore it. I'm totally open to it being right, but I'm going to assess it. And if it's not, okay, great. Like no qualms either way, no hard feelings. So you're still checking all the boxes plus some by not getting defensive, by not dismissing that other side, regardless of their reaction. So I think it's so important to really not only challenge your views, challenge your thoughts, but challenge what you think you're seeing in the person you're interacting with. Don't go to the default that you're dealing with a bad actor, that they're playing a different game. They might be, but make sure you're still taking the most rational actions to address that and to deal with that, and to allow the possibility for some common ground and to ultimately get to that objective truth.